The crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the ballroom floor, each prism throwing shadows that danced like ghosts across marble, so polished it reflected the silk gowns and tailored tuxedos of Seattle's elite. The air hung thick with expensive perfume, champagne bubbles, and the particular voltage that comes when old money mingles with new tech fortunes. Marina Castellanos moved through this world like water through stone, present but unnoticed, necessary but invisible. Her black serving uniform was pressed to sharp creases, her dark hair pulled back so tightly it made her temples ache. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours already, and the annual Providence Foundation Gala had at least 3 more to go. The tray in her hands held 12 flutes of Dom Perignon, each one worth more than her weekly paycheck from Sterling Events, the catering company that had employed her for the past 4 years. She knew the weight of these trays the way a pianist knows keys, by muscle memory, by the particular burn in her forearms, by the way her spine had learned to compensate. "Champagne, sir?" she offered to a man in a pewter-gray suit who was gesticulating wildly about cryptocurrency. He took a glass without looking at her, without breaking his sentence, without acknowledging that a human being had just served him. Marina had long ago stopped expecting eye contact at these events. The Providence Foundation Gala was the crown jewel of Seattle's charity circuit, held each October in the Grand Celestial Hotel's Imperial Ballroom. Tonight's event honored philanthropists and corporate leaders who'd contributed to medical research, with particular focus this year on cardiovascular innovation. The irony of what would unfold in the next 20 minutes was not lost on Marina when she thought about it later, during the sleepless nights that followed. She navigated past a cluster of women discussing a recent scandal at a rival tech company, their laughter sharp as the diamonds at their throats. Marina caught fragments of conversation as she moved. Mergers, acquisitions, summer homes in the San Juan Islands, children at boarding schools whose names she'd never heard of. This was a world she observed but could never enter, a glass wall more impenetrable than any physical barrier. Near the stage, she spotted James Kim, one of the other servers from Sterling Events. He was 23, working his way through graduate school at UW, and one of the few people at these events who actually saw her. He caught her eye and mimed wiping sweat from his brow. She smiled, a brief crack in her professional mask. "They're about to start the speeches," James whispered as they passed each other. "Brace yourself for the thank yous." Marina nodded. The speeches were always the worst part. 45 minutes of wealthy people thanking other wealthy people while the servers stood along the walls, holding heavy trays, forbidden from sitting, forbidden from eating, forbidden from being anything but furniture with pulses. If you've enjoyed this story so far, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps us continue bringing you these inspiring true stories. She refilled her tray at the bar station, a temporary setup along the east wall draped in white silk. Robert, the bartender, was a 58-year-old man who'd worked events longer than Marina had been alive. His hands moved with the efficiency of decades, pouring, mixing, garnishing. "You doing okay, Mija?" he asked, using the Spanish endearment he'd adopted for her after learning she was from Los Angeles originally. "You look tired." 3 more hours, she said, which wasn't really an answer but was all the answer she had energy for. "That's my girl. You're tougher than half these people combined." He slid the last champagne flute onto her tray. "Did you hear about the main honoree tonight? Victoria Chen. They say she's donating $15 million to cardiac research." Marina had heard the name, of course. Victoria Chen was impossible to avoid in Seattle. Her face appeared on billboards. Her company Quantum Solutions was one of the city's fastest-growing tech firms, and her philanthropic work had made her something of a local legend. At 43, she'd built an empire from nothing, or so the stories went. Marina had learned long ago that everyone's nothing looked different depending on where you started. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the beginning of the program. Marina took her position along the north wall, standing between an elaborate floral arrangement that probably cost 3 months of her rent and a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the Seattle skyline. The Space Needle punctured the October darkness, its lights reflecting off Elliott Bay in the distance. Michael Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Events and Marina's ultimate boss, though she'd only spoken to him twice in 4 years, took the stage. He was a portly man in his 60s with a practiced smile and a voice trained to carry across rooms exactly like this one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the 32nd Annual Providence Foundation Gala. Tonight, we celebrate not just generosity, but vision. Not just wealth, but wisdom in how that wealth can transform lives. Marina's feet throbbed. She'd worn her most comfortable work shoes, but comfortable was a relative term when you'd been standing since noon. She shifted her weight subtly from left to right, a technique she'd perfected that looked like perfect stillness to anyone watching but gave her aching arches brief moments of relief. The speeches began in earnest. The foundation's director, a woman named Patricia Holloway with silver hair and a voice like warm honey, spoke about the advances in cardiovascular medicine their grants had funded. She introduced researchers, doctors, and previous recipients of the foundation's support. Each person who took the stage told stories of lives saved, of hearts repaired, of futures made possible by medical innovation. Marina found herself actually listening, drawn in despite her exhaustion. There was something about the way Dr. Raymond Okafor, a cardiologist from Harborview Medical Center, described a new procedure for repairing damaged heart valves. He spoke about a 14-year-old girl named Sophie who'd been able to run track again, who'd been able to climb stairs without gasping, who'd been able to live. His voice cracked when he said, "Live," and Marina felt something tighten in her own chest. She thought of her mother, as she often did during quiet moments. Marina Castellanos had died of a heart attack when Marina was 19, collapsing in the kitchen of the small apartment they'd shared in East LA. There had been no warning, no chance to say goodbye, no dramatic final scene like in movies. One moment her mother was laughing at something on the television, asking Marina if she wanted more arroz con pollo. The next moment she was on the linoleum floor, and Marina was screaming into a phone, and paramedics were pushing past her, and then it was over. That had been 8 years ago. Marina had moved to Seattle 6 months later, running from memories, running toward something she couldn't quite name. She thought a new city might feel like a fresh start. Instead, it felt like being anonymous in a different zip code. And now, Patricia Holloway said, her voice pulling Marina back to the present, I have the extraordinary honor of introducing our keynote honoree. She's a pioneer in quantum computing, a champion of STEM education for girls, and a philanthropist whose generosity has touched countless lives. Please welcome Victoria Chen, founder and CEO of Quantum Solutions. The applause was thunderous. Marina watched as a woman took the stage, moving with the kind of confidence that seemed effortless but Marina recognized as carefully constructed. Victoria Chen wore a midnight blue gown that looked simple from a distance but probably cost more than Marina's car. Her black hair was cut in a sharp bob, and her posture was perfect, shoulders back, chin level, the bearing of someone who'd never doubted her right to occupy space. But as Victoria reached the podium and the spotlight hit her face fully, Marina noticed something. A slight sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the ballroom's aggressive air conditioning. A tremor in her hand as she gripped the podium's edge. The way she paused for just a beat too long before beginning to speak. Thank you, Patricia. Victoria began, her voice smooth and controlled. Thank you all for being here tonight. When I started Quantum Solutions 14 years ago, in a cramped office in Fremont, I never imagined. She stopped. Her hand went to her chest, pressing against the silk of her gown. The gesture looked almost casual, as if she were simply emphasizing a point. But Marina saw the way her fingers clutched the fabric, the way her knuckles went white. I never imagined, Victoria continued, but her voice had changed. It had gone thin, reedy, like sound through a damaged speaker. I never imagined that I would be standing here. The room had gone very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something is wrong but no one wants to acknowledge it yet. As if silence could keep reality at bay. Victoria's other hand joined the first, both now pressed against her chest. Her face had gone gray, the color leaching out of her skin like water from a wrung cloth. I'm sorry, she said, and the apology was so soft that Marina barely heard it from her position along the wall. I'm sorry, I think I need to. She didn't finish the sentence. Her legs buckled, and she went down behind the podium, disappearing from view as if she'd been a magic trick. as if she'd simply vanished. For a long moment, no one moved. The audience sat frozen, champagne glasses halfway to lips, conversations abandoned mid-word. It was the kind of collective paralysis that happens when the brain hasn't yet caught up to what the eyes have seen. Marina didn't remember deciding to move. Her body acted before her mind gave permission. The tray of champagne flutes crashing to the marble floor in an explosion of glass and golden liquid. She was running before the sound of breaking crystal had finished echoing. Her sensible black flats slapping against marble, her heart hammering against her ribs. She reached the stage in seconds that felt like years, vaulting up the 3 steps with an agility born from necessity rather than grace. Behind the podium, Victoria Chen lay on her back, her midnight blue gown pooling around her like spilled ink. Her eyes were open but unfocused, her mouth working but producing no sound. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow movements that Marina recognized with a cold certainty that made her hands shake. "Call 911, Marina shouted, her voice cutting through the ballroom's shocked silence. She dropped to her knees beside Victoria, her training from a CPR certification class she'd taken 3 years ago, a requirement for her job, flooding back in fragments. "Someone call 911 right now." People were moving now, the spell of paralysis broken. She heard voices, footsteps, the rustle of expensive fabric as people stood. But it all felt distant, muffled, as if she and Victoria were enclosed in glass while the rest of the world moved in slow motion outside. Marina tilted Victoria's head back, checking her airway. Clear. She pressed 2 fingers to Victoria's neck, searching for a pulse. They're rapid, irregular, but there. Victoria's eyes found hers, and in them Marina saw something she recognized. Terror. Not the polite fear of embarrassment or social mishap, but the primal terror of a body in revolt, of systems failing, of mortality suddenly made real. "Stay with me," Marina said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Stay with me. Okay? Help is coming. You're going to be okay." She had no idea if that was true. Victoria's pulse was weakening under her fingers, the rhythm growing more erratic. Sweat soaked through the silk of her gown, and her skin had gone from gray to an alarming bluish tint around her lips. "Does anyone have an AED?" Marina called out, remembering the automated external defibrillator that had been part of her training. "An AED? Is there one in the building?" "The concierge desk," someone said. A man's voice, coming from somewhere in the crowd that had gathered at the foot of the stage. "I'll get it." Marina kept her hand on Victoria's pulse, her eyes on Victoria's face. "What's your name?" she asked, even though she knew the answer. She'd learned that keeping people conscious, keeping them engaged, could be the difference between life and death. "Victoria," the woman whispered, the single word taking enormous effort. "I'm Marina." "Victoria, I need you to stay awake for me. Okay? Keep your eyes on me. Don't close them." "Hurts?" Victoria managed, her hand fluttering weakly toward her chest. "Can't breathe." I know it hurts, but help is coming. You're going to get through this." Marina became aware of other presences around her. James had appeared at her side, his young face pale but determined. "What can I do?" "Keep people back," Marina said. "Give her air, and find out where the hell the ambulance is." A woman in a crimson dress pushed through the crowd, her face tight with professional assessment. "I'm Dr. Sarah Winters, cardiology fellow at Swedish. Let me. She's in my care until the paramedics arrive," Marina said, her voice harder than she'd ever used at one of these events. "Unless you want to take over?" Dr. Winters knelt beside them, her hands moving to Victoria's wrist to check her pulse. "No, you're doing everything right. Keep talking to her. Keep her conscious." She looked up at the crowd. Did anyone see what happened before she collapsed? "She was sweating," Marina said, her eyes never leaving Victoria's face, and she grabbed her chest. "Classic cardiac symptoms. History of heart problems?" Winters asked Victoria directly, pitching her voice low and calm. Victoria managed a small shake of her head. "No," she whispered. "Never." The man who'd gone for the AED returned, breathless, carrying a white case with a red cross emblazoned on it. Dr. Winters took it, opening it with practiced efficiency. The device powered on with a cheerful beep that seemed obscene given the circumstances. "We need to remove any jewelry and expose her chest," Dr. Winters said, already reaching for the neckline of Victoria's gown. Marina helped, her fingers fumbling with the delicate fabric. This close, she could see the fine lines around Victoria's eyes, the faint scar on her left cheekbone. The way her mascara had started to run with sweat and tears, she probably didn't realize she was crying. Victoria Chen wasn't the untouchable CEO in this moment. She was just a woman whose body was betraying her, who was scared, who was human. Dr. Winters attached the AED pads to Victoria's chest, and the machine began its automated analysis. Analyzing heart rhythm, the device announced in its artificial voice, "Do not touch the patient." Marina sat back on her heels, her hands shaking now that they had nothing to do. The ballroom had gone silent again, hundreds of people holding their breath, waiting. "Shock advised," the AED announced. "Charging. Stand clear. Everyone back," Dr. Winters commanded, though her hands were already raised, demonstrating that she wasn't touching Victoria. The shock made Victoria's body convulse, her back arching off the floor. Marina heard someone in the crowd gasp, a sound of horror and fascination. The AED began analyzing again. "Continue CPR," it instructed. Dr. Winters positioned her hands over Victoria's sternum, beginning chest compressions with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Marina counted silently, 1, 2, 3, 4, watching Victoria's face, watching for any sign of response. Sirens. Finally, sirens. The sound grew louder, closer, and then there were paramedics pushing through the crowd, professional and efficient, with equipment that made Dr. Winters' efforts look primitive by comparison. They worked in practice tandem, checking vitals, starting in 4, preparing the stretcher. "You did good?" one of the paramedics said to Marina as they transferred Victoria onto the gurney. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes. "Your quick response probably saved her life." Marina nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched as they wheeled Victoria away, watched the crowd part like the Red Sea, watched the midnight blue gown trail over the side of the stretcher like a waterfall. And then they were gone, the Imperial Ballroom's ornate doors swinging shut behind them, and Marina was left kneeling on the stage in a puddle of champagne and broken glass, her uniform soaked with sweat and spilled drinks, her hands still shaking. This story gets even more powerful from here. If you're finding it meaningful, please share it with someone who needs inspiration today. The aftermath of Victoria Chen's collapse played out in fractured moments that Marina would later struggle to piece together into a coherent narrative. Michael Sterling appeared on stage, his practiced smile replaced with genuine shock, announcing that the gala would be postponed. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly, people clustering in groups to dissect what they'd witnessed, to speculate, to process. Marina heard fragments as she made her way off the stage. "Did you see how fast that waitress moved? I heard she knew exactly what to do." "Who was she?" James found her in the service hallway behind the ballroom, sitting on an overturned milk crate with her head between her knees, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Hey," he said softly, crouching beside her. "You okay?" "I don't know," Marina said honestly. "I don't know if I'm okay. You were amazing there. Like, superheroes are amazing." Marina laughed, a sound that came out more like a sob. "I just did what anyone would do." "That's not true, and you know it." James sat down on the floor beside her, his own tuxedo-style serving uniform rumpled and stained. "Half those people were frozen. You ran toward the problem. That's not what everyone does." Sterling Events Operations Manager, a woman named Diane Chen, no relation to Victoria, though the coincidence of surnames wouldn't be lost on Marina until later, appeared at the end of the hallway. "Marina Castellanos?" Marina stood, her legs unsteady. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Sterling would like to speak with you. Can you come to the manager's office?" The walk through the hotel's service corridors felt surreal. Marina had worked hundreds of events at the Grand Celestial, had walked these hallways so many times she could navigate them blindfolded. But tonight everything felt foreign, transformed by adrenaline and shock into unfamiliar territory. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the sound of her footsteps too loud against the concrete floor. Michael Sterling's temporary office was a converted storage room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out onto the loading dock. He stood when Marina entered, which surprised her. He'd never stood for her before. "Ms. Castellanos," he said, and his voice carried a warmth she'd never heard directed at her. "Please sit down." She sat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap to hide their continued trembling. She felt suddenly aware of her appearance. Her hair coming loose from its tight bun, her makeup smudged, the champagne stains on her uniform. "I want to thank you," Michael continued, "for your quick thinking tonight. Your actions were extraordinary." Marina didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed inadequate, but so did silence. "I've been in this business for 30 years, Michael went on, settling into his own chair. "And I've never seen anything like that. The way you moved, the way you took charge, that was remarkable." "I just did what I was trained to do," Marina said quietly. "The CPR certification, the emergency response training, that was all part of the job requirements. Training is one thing. Actually executing under pressure is something else entirely." He leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "How long have you been with Sterling Events?" 4 years. 4 years." He repeated it as if it surprised him, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Castellanos. I should know your name. I should know all my employees' names, especially those who've been with us that long. That's on me." Marina didn't respond. What could she say? That she'd noticed his ignorance? That it had hurt quietly, in ways she'd learned to push down and ignore? "I'd like to make sure you're compensated for tonight," Michael said. "Triple overtime and a bonus. Does that seem fair?" "That's very generous, sir. Thank you. It's the least I can do." He stood, extending his hand. Marina stood too, shaking it, feeling the soft, uncalloused palm of a man who'd never worked with his hands. "Get some rest. Take tomorrow off. We'll be in touch." Marina left the office feeling more confused than when she'd entered. She retrieved her purse from the staff locker room, changed out of her stained uniform into the jeans and hoodie she'd worn to work, and walked out into the October night. Seattle in October was a study in gray sky, gray streets, gray water reflecting gray buildings. Marina had never gotten used to how early it got dark here, how the sun seemed to give up around 5:30 in the afternoon, surrendering to an endless twilight that could last for hours. She walked to the bus stop on 5th Avenue, her mind replaying the evening on an endless loop. Victoria's gray face, the feeling of her pulse under Marina's fingers, irregular and weak. The way her eyes had locked onto Marina's, desperate and trusting. The bus was nearly empty at 11:30 on a Saturday night. Marina took a window seat and pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the city slide past. They passed the Amazon spheres, those strange glass domes that looked like alien architecture, and then the convention center, and then the freeway entrance where the bus would carry her north to Northgate, to the small studio apartment she rented in a building that had been scheduled for demolition twice but kept getting reprieved. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. "You good? Want company?" She texted back, "I'm okay, just tired. Thanks for checking." Another buzz. "You're a hero, you know that?" Marina didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted and confused and strangely empty, as if the adrenaline had hollowed her out when it drained away. She turned off her phone and watched the city give way to residential neighborhoods, to strip malls and gas stations, to the familiar landscape of her life. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a 4-story building called the Madrona, though there wasn't a Madrona tree anywhere near it. The elevator had been broken for 2 weeks, so Marina climbed the stairs, her legs protesting with each step. She could hear televisions through thin walls, smell someone's late dinner, curry, maybe, or something with cumin. The building housed mostly immigrants and service workers like herself, people who worked multiple jobs and sent money home to family in other countries. People who were invisible in the city's gleaming downtown but essential to keeping it running. Inside her apartment, Marina didn't turn on the lights. She stood in the darkness, letting her eyes adjust, seeing the familiar shapes of her small life. The futon that served as both couch and bed. The kitchenette with its two-burner stove and mini-fridge. The desk she'd found on Craigslist where she'd set up her laptop and the stack of textbooks she'd been slowly working through. Marina had been taking online classes for the past 2 years, one course at a time, working toward a degree in nursing. It was slow going, she could only afford one class per quarter, and sometimes not even that if work was slow or an unexpected expense came up. At this rate, she'd have her RN license when she was 40. But it was forward motion, however glacial, and forward motion mattered. She'd grown up watching her mother work as a home health aide, had seen Luisa's dedication to the elderly and disabled people she cared for. "We do God's work," her mother used to say, though she wasn't particularly religious. "We help people when they can't help themselves. That's what matters in this life." Marina had wanted to be a nurse since she was 12 years old. Since she'd watched her mother gently clean and dress the wounds of an elderly man with diabetes who couldn't do it himself. She'd seen the gratitude in his eyes, the relief, and she'd thought, this is important. This is real. But nursing school required time and money, two things Marina had never had enough of simultaneously. She'd graduated high school with decent grades but no scholarships, no college fund, no path forward except working. So she worked. In Los Angeles, she'd waitressed at a diner, cleaned houses, done data entry for a telemarketing company. After her mother died and she'd moved to Seattle, she'd found sterling events, drawn by the promise of steady hours and health insurance. The health insurance was terrible, high deductible, limited coverage, but it was more than nothing. And the steady hours had turned out to be a relative term. She worked 50 hours some weeks and 15 others, depending on the season and how many events were scheduled. But she'd learned to budget carefully, to save when she could, to make the online classes work around her unpredictable schedule. Marina finally turned on the small lamp beside her futon, and the room filled with weak yellow light. She heated water for tea in her electric kettle, a luxury she'd bought herself last Christmas, and sat at her desk opening her laptop. She had an assignment due tomorrow for her Anatomy and Physiology 2 class, a paper on the cardiovascular system. The irony wasn't lost on her. She stared at the blank document, but instead of seeing a blinking cursor, she saw Victoria Chen's face, the terror in her eyes, the way her pulse had felt under Marina's fingers, like a bird's heartbeat, rapid and fragile. Marina wondered if Victoria was okay now, if she was in surgery, if she was even alive. The not knowing sat in her stomach like a stone. She Googled Victoria Chen quantum solutions, and a flood of results appeared. There were dozens of articles, profiles in tech magazines, interviews in business journals, features in the Seattle Times about her philanthropic work. Marina clicked on a profile from last year in Wired magazine. The article painted Victoria as a genius and a maverick, a woman who dropped out of MIT at 22 to start quantum solutions with 2 friends and a dream. They'd built quantum computing systems that made existing technology look like stone tools by comparison. The company had gone public 5 years ago, making Victoria a billionaire at 41. She split her time between Seattle and San Francisco, served on the boards of 3 nonprofits, and had been named one of Fortune's most powerful women 3 years running. There were photos, Victoria at tech conferences, Victoria meeting with world leaders, Victoria receiving awards. In all of them, she looked confident, polished, untouchable. Nothing like the terrified woman whose pulse had fluttered under Marina's fingers. Marina closed the laptop. She should work on her assignment. She should sleep. She should do anything except sit here obsessing over a woman she'd helped for 10 minutes and would probably never see again. But sleep wouldn't come. She lay on her futon, staring at the ceiling, watching car headlights slide across the plaster, listening to the building's nighttime sounds. Someone's television. A couple arguing in Spanish 2 floors up. The rattle of the ancient heating system struggling to live. Marina thought about her mother. If Luisa had been at that gala, not as a server but as a guest in some alternate universe where class and circumstance were different, would she have run toward Victoria the way Marina had? She knew the answer, of course. Her mother had possessed a fearlessness about helping people that Marina had both inherited and struggled with. Luisa had never questioned her calling, never doubted her purpose. She'd known she was meant to care for people, and she'd done it until the day her own heart gave out. And tonight she hadn't. Tonight, when Victoria Chen had collapsed, Marina's training had kicked in, overriding fear and uncertainty. She'd done what needed to be done. Maybe it had been enough. Maybe Victoria would survive because Marina had run toward her instead of standing frozen like everyone else. Marina finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning, her dreamless sleep the kind that came from emotional exhaustion. She woke at 11 to sunlight streaming through her window and 17 missed calls on her phone. The first was from James. OMG. Check the news. The second was from Diane at Sterling Events. Marina, please call me back as soon as you get this. The third was from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Castellanos, this is Regina Watts from the Seattle Times. I'd like to speak with you about last night's incident. Please call me back. Marina sat up, her heart pounding. She opened her phone's browser and searched Victoria Chen. The top result was from the Seattle Times, posted 2 hours ago. Tech CEO Victoria Chen stable after cardiac event at charity gala. Waitress credited with saving her life. The article included everything: Victoria's collapse, the dramatic response, the ambulance rush to Swedish medical center. And there, in the 5th paragraph, was Marina's name. Marina Castellanos, a server with Sterling Events, immediately began administering emergency care and coordinated with medical professionals until paramedics arrived. Hospital staff credit her quick actions with preventing further complications. There was a photo, grainy, clearly taken with someone's phone, showing Marina kneeling beside Victoria on the stage, her face intense with concentration. Marina stared at it, feeling dissociated from the image, as if it were a stranger she was looking at. Her phone rang. The number was local but unfamiliar. Against her better judgment, she answered. Ms. Castellanos? This is Evelyn Park from King 5 News. I'd love to chat with you about what happened last night. Do you have a few minutes? No, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. Just a brief comment? Our viewers are very interested in. Marina hung up. Her phone immediately rang again. A different number. She let it go to voicemail. Over the next hour, she received 14 more calls from reporters, 3 from Sterling Events, and 1 from a woman who identified herself as Victoria Chen's chief of staff, asking if Marina would be willing to accept a personal phone call from Ms. Chen to express her gratitude. Marina sat on her futon, surrounded by the detritus of her small life, the anatomy textbook, the mug of now-cold tea, the second-hand blanket she'd bought at Goodwill, and felt the walls of her anonymous existence crumbling. She'd spent years being invisible, and now suddenly, everyone could see her. She didn't know if that was a good thing or a terrifying one. Marina didn't call any of the reporters back. She turned off her phone, made herself breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, comfort food from childhood, and tried to pretend the world outside her apartment didn't exist. It worked for about 2 hours, until someone knocked on her door. She checked the peephole and saw James standing in the hallway, holding what looked like a coffee and a paper bag. I know you're hiding in there, he called through the door. I brought sustenance and moral support. Also, there's a news van downstairs, so you might want to let me in before they follow me up here. Marina opened the door. James slipped inside, and she locked it quickly behind him. News van? She repeated. 2 of them, actually. King 5 and Q13. They're staking out the building. He set the coffee and bag on her small kitchen counter. I brought you a latte and a croissant from that place you like on North Gateway. Figured you probably weren't going outside today. You're a saint. Marina took the coffee gratefully, inhaling the familiar smell of espresso and steamed milk. How did they even find out where I live? Public records, probably. Or someone at Sterling gave them your address. Not maliciously, just, stupidly. James sat on her futon, looking around the apartment with the careful politeness of someone trying not to judge. This is nice. I like what you've done with the space. Marina laughed despite herself. It's 40 square feet and smells like curry from the restaurant downstairs. It's cozy. Very minimalist. He grinned. So, have you seen the news? Some of it. I stopped looking after the 5th article. There are more than 5. Marina, you're all over social media. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, someone filmed the whole thing, and the video has like 3 million views. People are calling you a hero. Marina sat down beside him, suddenly needing to be off her feet even though she'd barely been standing. I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone. Marina sat down beside him, suddenly needing to be off her feet even though she'd barely been standing. I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do. But that's the thing, most people didn't do anything. They froze. You didn't. James pulled out his phone. Look, I'm going to show you something, but don't freak out. Okay? He opened TikTok and showed her the video. It was shot from somewhere in the audience, shaky but clear enough. Marina watched herself drop the tray of champagne. The sound of breaking glass was even louder on the recording, and sprint toward the stage. She watched herself vault onto the platform, drop to her knees beside Victoria. The video cut off before the paramedics arrived, but the comments were endless. She didn't even hesitate. OMG. That's what a real hero looks like. While all those rich people just stood there, the waitress ran to help. This made me cry. Faith in humanity restored. There were thousands of comments, and they kept coming as Marina scrolled. People praising her, people sharing their own medical emergency stories, people asking who she was and how to contact her. It's too much, Marina said, handing the phone back. This feels like too much attention. I get it. But Marina, this is a good thing. People see you as someone who did something brave and selfless. That's not nothing. Marina's phone, which she'd turned back on to check the time, buzzed with another call. This time, she recognized the number. Sterling Events main office. She answered. Hello. Marina, it's Diane. Thank God I reached you. Listen, we have a situation developing, and we need to talk about how to handle it. What kind of situation? The media attention is escalating. We've had 47 press inquiries this morning alone. CNN wants to do a segment. Good Morning America is asking for an interview. And Victoria Chen's people have been very persistent about wanting to arrange a meeting between you and Ms. Chen. Marina felt dizzy. CNN? Good Morning America? This was spinning out of control faster than she could process. I just want things to go back to normal, Marina said quietly. I understand, but normal might not be an option right now. Michael wants to meet with you tomorrow to discuss how we move forward. Can you come to the office at 10? Yes. Okay. Good. And Marina, don't talk to any reporters without clearing it with us first. We want to make sure you're protected. After she hung up, Marina looked at James. This is crazy. 2 days ago, nobody knew my name. Now I can't leave my apartment without news vans following me. Welcome to 15 minutes of fame, James said. Though honestly, I think this might last longer than 15 minutes. He was right, though neither of them knew how right at the time. The next morning, Marina took an Uber to the Sterling Events office in Soto, wearing her most professional outfit, black slacks, and a white blouse she usually reserved for job interviews she never got. The news vans had left her building overnight, but she spotted one parked outside the Sterling Events office. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with an energy she'd never felt during her previous visits. People stared at her as she walked through the hallway. Some smiled, some whispered. One woman, a coordinator named Beth, whom Marina had worked with on dozens of events, actually approached her. Marina, I just wanted to say what you did was incredible. My dad had a heart attack last year, and if someone like you had been there, well, anyway, you're amazing. Marina didn't know what to say except, thank you, which felt inadequate but was all she had. Michael Sterling's actual office, not the temporary converted storage room from Saturday night, was on the 3rd floor, with windows overlooking the industrial buildings and train tracks that defined this part of Seattle. He stood when she entered, as did 2 other people. A woman in an expensive gray suit and a younger man with an iPad. Marina, thank you for coming, Michael said. This is Jennifer Walcott, our attorney, and David Kim, our public relations consultant. Please, sit down. The next hour was a blur of contracts and talking points and media strategy. Jennifer explained that Sterling Events wanted Marina to sign an agreement regarding public statements. Essentially, they wanted her to coordinate any interviews or public appearances through them. In exchange, they were offering her a promotion to event coordinator and a significant raise. "We want to make sure you're taken care of," Michael said. "You've brought positive attention to our company, and we value that. We value you." David, the PR consultant, opened his iPad. "I've put together some potential interview opportunities. We're thinking we start with local news, then move to national news if there's interest. The story has good bones. A working-class hero saves a billionaire CEO. It plays well across demographics." Marina felt sick. "You want to use this for publicity?" "We want to tell your story," David corrected gently. "And yes, Sterling Events benefits from that association, but you benefit too. This is a platform, Marina. You could leverage this into opportunities you've never had access to before." "What kind of opportunities?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Speaking engagements, corporate training videos, maybe even a book deal if we play this right. The everyday hero narrative is very marketable right now." Marina looked at the contract Jennifer had slid across the desk. The raise was substantial, almost double her current hourly rate. The coordinator position came with benefits, real benefits, the kind that might actually cover a hospital visit or let her take more than one class per quarter. It was everything she'd wanted, handed to her because she'd done what any decent person would do. "I need to think about it," Marina said. "Of course," Michael said, though his smile tightened slightly. "Take 24 hours. But Marina, opportunities like this don't come around often, especially for people in your position." That last phrase hung in the air like smoke. People in your position. He meant it kindly, probably, but Marina heard the subtext. People who are invisible, people who serve champagne at galas they could never afford to attend, people who take night classes because that's the only way they can afford education, people whose names nobody knows until they do something extraordinary. She left the office with the contract in a manila folder, feeling more confused than when she'd arrived. On the Uber ride home, her phone rang again. This time, it was a number with a 415 area code, San Francisco. "Ms. Castellanos? This is Margaret Zhou. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Chen. Ms. Chen is recovering well, and she's asked me to reach out to you personally to express her gratitude and to see if you might be willing to meet with her." Marina's heart hammered. "Is she okay? I've been worried." "She's doing much better, thank you. She had emergency surgery Saturday night to repair a blocked artery, what they call a widowmaker heart attack. The doctors told her that if you hadn't responded as quickly as you did, if you hadn't kept her conscious and stable, she likely wouldn't have survived the ambulance ride to the hospital." Marina felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so glad she's okay. She'd like to tell you that herself if you're open to it. She's being discharged tomorrow and will be staying at her Seattle residence for recovery. Would you be willing to visit? I can arrange a car, and of course your time would be compensated." "You don't need to compensate me. I'd like to see her." "Wonderful. Would Wednesday afternoon work? Say, 2 o'clock. Marina agreed, and after she hung up, she sat in the back of the Uber watching Seattle slide past and wondered how her life had become so surreal in less than 72 hours. The next 2 days were a study in cognitive dissonance. Marina's TikTok video has now been viewed over 8 million times. News outlets had picked up the story. She'd been mentioned on CNN, featured in a segment on The Today Show, and profiled in People magazine's online edition. Her Instagram, which she'd barely used except to follow a few friends and some cooking accounts, had gained 20,000 followers. People sent her messages, some supportive, some strange, some asking for money or help with their own problems, as if saving one person's life had made her responsible for saving everyone. James brought her groceries because she still couldn't leave her apartment without being recognized. Her neighbor Mrs. Kim, a 73-year-old Korean woman who'd lived in the building for 30 years, knocked on her door to bring her homemade kimchi and to tell her she was proud of her. "You did good thing," Mrs. Kim said in her accented English. "Your mama would be proud." That made Marina cry harder than anything else had, because she knew it was true. Her mother would have been proud, would have hugged her and called her Mija and told her she'd always known Marina had a good heart. On Wednesday afternoon, a black Mercedes arrived outside her building at 1:30. The driver, a polite man in his 50s named Thomas, held the door for her as if she were someone important. They drove north, past the University of Washington, into Windermere, one of Seattle's wealthiest neighborhoods where houses sold for multiple millions and had private docks on Lake Washington. Victoria Chen's Seattle residence was a modern architectural masterpiece of glass and steel and wood, designed to look like it was floating above the water. Thomas pulled into a circular driveway where another person was waiting, a woman in her 30s with a tablet and an efficient demeanor. "Ms. Castellanos? I'm Margaret Jo. We spoke on the phone. Ms. Chen is so looking forward to meeting you. Please, come in." The house was beautiful in a way that made Marina feel simultaneously awed and uncomfortable. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials, art that probably cost more than Marina's annual salary. Views that seemed impossibly vast. Margaret led her through rooms that flowed into each other, finally arriving at a sunroom that overlooked the lake. Victoria Chen sat in a leather chair by the window, wearing casual clothes, yoga pants, and a soft sweater that somehow still looked expensive. She was pale, thinner than she'd appeared at the gala, with a fragility that hadn't been there before. But her eyes were sharp, intelligent, alive. She stood when Marina entered, a bit unsteady, and Marina's nursing instinct kicked in. "Please don't get up. You should be resting." "I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going stir-crazy." Victoria smiled, and it transformed her face from severe to warm. "Marina, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Marina sat on the couch across from Victoria, and Margaret quietly excused herself, leaving them alone. For a moment, they just looked at each other. These two women whose lives had intersected so dramatically, who came from such different worlds but who now shared something profound. "I wanted to thank you," Victoria said finally. "I know that's inadequate. Thank you doesn't cover saving someone's life. But I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to say anything," Marina said. "I'm just glad you're okay. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck, honestly. But alive. Which is more than I would be without you." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "The doctors told me what you did. How you kept me conscious, how you coordinated with Dr. Winters, how you stayed calm when everyone else was panicking. They said those minutes made the difference." Marina felt her own tears coming. "I just did what I was trained to do. That's what everyone says about you. That you were just doing your job. But it wasn't your job to risk your own well-being, to take charge, to care about a stranger. That was you. That was who you are as a person." Victoria leaned forward, her expression intense. "I want to do something for you. I want to help you the way you helped me. You don't need to do anything. Please let me finish. Margaret did some research on you. I hope that's not intrusive, but I wanted to understand who you are. I know you're taking online nursing classes, one at a time because that's all you can afford. I know you work 50-hour weeks when you can get them and 15 when you can't. I know you're brilliant and dedicated and you shouldn't be struggling like this." Marina felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't anticipated. "A lot of people struggle. I'm not special. But you are. You saved my life, Marina. Let me do something meaningful for yours." Victoria pulled a folder from beside her chair. "I want to pay for your nursing school. All of it. Full tuition, books, living expenses so you don't have to work if you don't want to. I want to remove every barrier between you and the career you're meant to have." Marina stared at the folder, at this impossible offer, and felt the world tilt beneath her. "I can't accept that. That's too much." "It's not too much. I'm worth $2.3 billion, Marina. That's an obscene amount of money that I couldn't spend in 10 lifetimes. But this? Helping you become a nurse, helping you help other people the way you helped me? That's the best use of money I can imagine. I don't know what to say. Say yes, please. Let me do this." Victoria's voice broke. "I was 42 years old, at the peak of my career, thinking I was invincible. And then my heart stopped, and I realized how fragile everything is, how quickly it can all disappear. I want to use my second chance to help you have all the chances you deserve." Marina thought about her mother, about Louisa cleaning wounds and changing bedsheets and holding the hands of dying strangers. She thought about the years she'd been grinding away, one class at a time, exhausting herself to move inches forward. She thought about the alternative Victoria was offering, the freedom to focus completely on becoming the nurse she'd always wanted to be. Yes, Marina whispered. Okay, yes. Victoria's face broke into a radiant smile. Thank you. You have no idea how happy this makes me. They talked for another hour about nursing, about Victoria's recovery, about their lives. Victoria told her about growing up poor in San Francisco, about being the daughter of immigrants, about building quantum solutions from nothing. Marina told her about her mother, about Los Angeles, about the invisible life she'd been living in Seattle. When Marina finally left, driven home in the Mercedes by Thomas, she felt like she was floating. Everything had changed. Everything was possible. But she didn't know yet about the price that came with sudden visibility, with stepping out of the shadows into light. She didn't know about the scrutiny, the jealousy, the way some people would resent her good fortune and attribute it to luck rather than character. She didn't know that Sterling Events would leak the details of her contract negotiation to the press, that people would question whether she deserved Victoria's generosity, that trolls on social media would call her an opportunist, a gold digger, someone who'd manufactured her heroism for personal gain. She didn't know that the next 6 months would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, that she'd face criticism and doubt and moments where she'd wonder if accepting Victoria's help had been a mistake. But she also didn't know about the lives she'd save once she became a nurse, about the patients who'd hold her hand and call her an angel, about the night shift in the cardiac ICU where she'd talk a frightened teenager through his father's heart surgery, about the young mother she'd help resuscitate in the ER, who'd later bring her daughter to meet, the nurse who gave me back my life. She didn't know that Victoria would become not just a benefactor but a friend, someone who'd text her on bad days and celebrate with her on good ones, who'd be at her nursing school graduation holding flowers and crying with pride. She didn't know that in 5 years, she'd be teaching CPR to other service workers, insisting they understand that their training wasn't just checking a box but preparing for the moment when someone's life would depend on them not freezing, not hesitating, not being afraid to act. Marina didn't know any of that on the Wednesday afternoon when Thomas drove her home from Windermere. She only knew that her hands had stopped shaking for the first time in 3 days, that the future suddenly looked different, that maybe, just maybe, being seen wasn't so terrifying after all. The Seattle Times ran the story on Thursday morning. Billionaire CEO Victoria Chen to fund Waitress's nursing education after life-saving rescue. The article was sympathetic, touching even, detailing Marina's background and struggles, Victoria's near-death experience, and the scholarship that had emerged from it. But the comments section told a different story. So she gets a free ride for doing her job? What about the paramedics who actually saved the woman's life? This is exactly what's wrong with society. Do something on camera and you get rewarded. Thousands of people help others every day and get nothing. I guarantee she knew there were cameras. This was calculated. Rich people and their pet projects. She'll probably drop out after a semester. Marina read the comments until James physically took her phone away. Stop torturing yourself, he said. They were sitting in her apartment, him perched on the futon while she paced the small space like a caged animal. Those people don't know you. Their opinions don't matter. But what if they're right? What if I don't deserve this? You saved a woman's life, Marina. You didn't ask for anything in return. Victoria wanted to help you. That's not opportunism, that's grace. Both of you showed grace. But the criticism continued, amplified by social media's echo chamber. Someone started a hashtag privilege for performance. A thin piece appeared on Medium titled, "The Problem with Viral Heroism." A YouTuber made a video analyzing the gala footage frame by frame, claiming Marina had deliberately positioned herself near the stage for maximum visibility. Sterling Events called her in again. This time, Michael's expression was grave. "We need to address the optics situation," he said. Jennifer the lawyer and David the PR consultant flanked him like sentries. "The narrative is getting away from us." "What narrative?" Marina asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "That you're being rewarded disproportionately for a single act. That you're taking advantage of Victoria Chen's gratitude. That Sterling Events is using this for publicity." David pulled up his tablet. We've lost 3 clients this week. They're saying they don't want to be associated with the controversy. Marina felt sick. So what do you want me to do? We think you should do an interview, Jennifer said. A big one. Set the record straight. Show people who you really are. I thought you told me not to talk to reporters. That was before things escalated. Now we need to control the story. David leaned forward. We've had offers from everyone. I think we should go with 60 Minutes. Prestigious, respected, gives you the platform to really explain yourself. Explain myself for what? For helping someone. For accepting help in return, Michael said quietly. People have a complicated relationship with success they perceive as unearned. You need to make them understand that you earned this not just through what you did at the gala, but through who you are and what you've been working toward. Marina wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to retreat back into invisibility, to reject the scholarship, to return to her anonymous life where nobody judged her motives or questioned her character. But that life was gone. The moment she'd run toward Victoria Chen, she'd crossed a threshold she couldn't uncross. Okay, she said finally. I'll do the interview. The 60 Minutes crew came to Seattle 2 weeks later. They filmed Marina at her apartment at Sterling Events, at the Grand Celestial Hotel where the gala had taken place. The correspondent, a woman named Leslie Stahl with penetrating eyes and a measured voice, asked questions that felt both sympathetic and probing. Some people have suggested that you knew you were being filmed, that your response was calculated. I didn't know anything except that a woman was dying, Marina said, looking directly at the camera. I didn't think about cameras or publicity or anything except doing what I was trained to do. If people think I'm lying about that, I can't change their minds. I know the truth. What about the scholarship? Do you think you deserve it? Marina hesitated. I think Victoria Chen can do whatever she wants with her money. She chose to help me because she wanted to. I didn't ask for it. I didn't expect it. But I'm not going to refuse it and insult her generosity just because some people think I don't deserve help. They interviewed Victoria too, filming her at her Windermere home. She looked stronger now, color returned to her face, though she moved carefully, mindful of her healing body. Why did you decide to fund Ms. Castellanos' education? Leslie asked. Here's a 900-word continuation to finish the story. Victoria didn't hesitate. Because she gave me my life back, and because the system is broken. Marina had been working toward her dream for years, taking one class at a time, exhausting herself just to move forward inches. She's brilliant, dedicated, compassionate. Everything a nurse should be. Why should someone like that have to struggle for decades to achieve what should be accessible? I have resources I'll never use. This is the most meaningful thing I can do with them. But critics say you're creating an unfair advantage, that thousands of people help others every day without recognition. They're right, Victoria interrupted. Thousands of people do help others without recognition. That's exactly the problem. We've built a society that doesn't value care work, doesn't compensate for it fairly, doesn't make education accessible to the people who want to dedicate their lives to helping others. If my near-death experience and Marina's courage can start a conversation about that, then maybe something good comes from all of this. The segment aired on a Sunday night in November. Marina watched it at James's apartment because she couldn't bear to watch alone. When it ended, her phone immediately exploded with notifications. But this time, the tone had shifted. This made me cry. She seems so genuine. Victoria Chen is right. We don't value care workers enough. I misjudged her. This girl deserves everything good. The hashtag changed. Hashtag investing caregivers started trending. Other tech executives announced scholarship programs for nursing and emergency medical training. A nonprofit called the Marina Castellanos Fund was established, without her permission, though she didn't fight it, to provide education grants for service workers pursuing healthcare careers. Sterling Events stopped losing clients. In fact, they gained them, as companies wanted to be associated with the company that employs real heroes. But Marina noticed something else in the aftermath. Victoria's generosity had accidentally shone a spotlight on a larger truth. The comments sections and Twitter threads weren't just about Marina anymore. People were sharing their own stories, the single mother working 3 jobs to get through community college, the former refugee studying to become a doctor, the veteran using GI Bill benefits to become a paramedic. The conversation had expanded beyond one viral moment to a broader reckoning about who gets opportunities and why. Marina started nursing school full-time in January. The University of Washington's accelerated program was rigorous and demanding, but for the first time in her life, she could focus entirely on studying. No double shifts, no choosing between textbooks and groceries, no falling asleep over assignments at 2 in the morning because she'd worked a 12-hour catering event. She was terrified at first, terrified of failing, of proving the critics right, of wasting Victoria's investment. But her professors saw what Victoria had seen. Someone who'd been preparing for this her entire life, whose compassion was matched by competence, who understood suffering because she'd lived adjacent to it. Victoria attended Marina's white coat ceremony, sitting in the audience beside James and Mrs. Kim and a handful of Marina's classmates who'd become friends. When Marina's name was called and she walked across the stage to receive the short white coat that marked her transition to clinical student, Victoria stood and applauded until others joined her, until the whole auditorium was standing. After the ceremony, Victoria approached Marina in the crowded lobby. She moved slowly still, mindful of her healing heart, but her smile was radiant. "Your mother would be so proud," Victoria said, pulling Marina into a careful hug. Marina felt tears spill over. "I wish she could see this." "She does. Wherever she is, she does." Victoria pulled back, holding Marina's shoulders. "And Marina, this is just the beginning. You're going to save so many lives. You're going to be extraordinary." 2 years later, on a rainy Tuesday night in March, Marina was working her first shift as a newly licensed RN in Swedish Medical Center's cardiac ICU, the same hospital where Victoria had been taken after her collapse. A code blue was called for room 412. Marina ran. The patient was a 56-year-old man named Robert, an elementary school teacher having a massive heart attack. His wife stood in the corner, crying, helpless. Marina and her team worked with the precision of a symphony. Medications, interventions, the organized chaos of people fighting death and winning. When Robert's heart rhythm stabilized and he was breathing on his own again, his wife grabbed Marina's hand. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you for saving him." Marina thought about Victoria, about her mother, about the chain of moments that had led her to this room, to this man, to this life she was now helping preserve. She thought about the night at the Grand Celestial Hotel, when she dropped a tray of champagne and ran toward someone who needed her. "It's what I'm here for," Marina said simply, and meant it with every fiber of her being. She'd been invisible once, moving through a world that didn't see her. But she'd learned that visibility wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing what needed to be done and doing it anyway. The rest was just noise. Marina Castellanos was a nurse now, and she was exactly where she was always meant to be. Thank you for reading Marina's story. If it touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of everyday heroes who change lives.